Alright, so for this exercise, I'm rendering an animation that will be a looping animation of a character free falling. So I've rigged some bones and I've created an animation. I'm also using a shader that's kind of the lava. This is in Carrara, by the way. Love this program. Great 3D animation to create all sorts of different scenic renderings and character animation and other things. So what I'm doing here is rendering it to a sequence of PNG files, and in 32-bit. So I have the alpha channel also, and the alpha channel is set to record the object ID. Since I have just one object, it will essentially record the silhouette, the shape of the character being rendered, regardless of what color it is rendered at. The background is left black, could be any other background, but the important thing is to record where the pixels are actually coming, not from the background, but from the character. And so that's going to be in the alpha channel, and then we can use that to keep the background transparent when we pick this image up as a animated sequence. We can do the compositing on that. We can then have her fly or fall into, I don't know, a view over a planet. Maybe we'll put a planet behind it that's also on fire, and we'll have her showing that glowing effect on the red spots. All sorts of different things you can do with that once you have the object rendered, either with a unique color that you can use for keying. And this would be possible here too, because it's black, whereas her body is showing either red or a dark gray. It's not exactly the same tone as the black. So we can also use the color keying in this case. But sometimes you don't have the ability to key to a unique color that is not also seen on the person or on the character that's doing the walk sequence or whatever the character is. So instead of keying on the color, you may sometimes need to key on another piece of information, such as something that was recorded in the alpha channel, to indicate where the character actually is located, even if that pixel may actually be somewhat transparent itself, or just happen to have the same color, the same RGB value as the background. And it's not always a matter of exactly the same RGB value. It could be something like close enough, there's a little margin around it. And if it's just very dark, not totally black, the background may be totally black, but maybe some parts, maybe there's a belt with a buckle that's reflecting it, and it's going to show the black, very dark reflection on it. So it may actually key to that as well and turn that transparent. We know, we see that all the time when we do green screen in the photo studio, and somebody's wearing a green tie or a tag or a clip or something, or a pin, or a reflective one. It doesn't have to be green, but it's reflecting, and if you happen to have it at an angle where it's reflecting the green background, it's going to look green there too. And you get those bullet holes right through your shirt. So that's something that we deal with when we do animation, or even static rendering. Video or static, same thing. If you're keying to color, you're going to want to make sure that you're not introducing any sort of bleeding or any sort of pollution of the environment into the scene that might affect what colors actually are being seen there. Reflection and refraction also, if you work with glass or other transparent elements, it's a big concern usually. Alright, so I'm going to wait for this rendering to complete and continue this tutorial as soon as that's done. Alright, so I'm back. The rendering is done. The animation is saved into an image sequence. Let's go and find it. Alright, so here's the folder that contains my image sequence. These were rendered in Carrara. I think it took about an hour to render this entire sequence. Let's see. 299 is the last index, starting at 0, so I have 300 frames. Yep, that sounds about right. 10 seconds at 30 frames per second, 300 frames. Now, in the Windows preview here, the thumbnail shows a white background, but just That's because it's transparent, and it does recognize the PNG and essentially leaves it white when it sees a transparent bit or pixel. So when you open that, it will probably show the original color that's actually there, but in addition to the color, it has the alpha channel containing the opacity of it, which makes it transparent on the background. You can see that, for instance, with Irfan View, that under image info, their information, it will show it as 32 bits. There it is, right? Original colors, 32 bits. That means it has an alpha channel, in this case containing the transparency mask. So that's exactly what we need when we want to use the outline or the shape of the object that was rendered, regardless of the background color. And even if, for instance, the black that we see in the background, if some dark colors on her body were also black, for instance, if she was wearing a black suit, or if she had a belt, a buckle that was reflecting the environment, the dark background, that would be difficult to color key on. But with the alpha channel containing that profile, that silhouette, we can do that in Dogwaffle. So let's go back to Dogwaffle 9, still running the beta here, under development, still expecting September release. And let's have a look first at the first image. So let's go just and open one image. Let's go back to the new project. This one is on compositing. There it is. And so let me load the first one. And am I actually recording this? I want to make sure I am, yes. So here's the first image, and it may not show the marching ants, you know, the outline of the selection, and that's simply, it loaded it, but it didn't enable that by default. So what you can do is go to the selection menu here and actually enable it, turn it on, right, alpha on off. And there it is. So that's what you should see if you have indeed a file containing the alpha channel, containing in the alpha channel the selection mask. Now, what part is selected or what part is not selected, in other words, what part is transparent and which part is opaque, this will not tell you. You need to actually see the alpha channel as a grayscale, black and white, or any gray values in between. What you see here, this marching line, this marching ant outline, is really just showing the 50% transition. Where is it going from fully opaque to fully transparent? But from this alone you cannot tell. So one thing that we recommend is, first of all, you can, instead of just showing the marching ants, one thing you can do is enable the alpha overlay, and the overlay will show purple or pink if it's not visible, if it's black, if it's not selected. So if that were the case for the inside here, it would make it darker in purple, but nothing changes. So most likely we actually have the white part in the selection mask in here multiplied to the current color. It leaves it alone. The back part here is already black, so turning that against pink, it doesn't really make a difference there either. So to be absolutely sure that we have a non-selected or transparent environment around the body and an opaque one on the inside, what I could do also is take a snapshot under selection and store the alpha. Okay, and there it is. So now you see that the white part is actually the selected part on the inside. Now that's going to be the one that is enabled if we want to paint over it, if we want to apply filters over it, if we want to do anything with it. Well, maybe we don't. Maybe we want to do the opposite. Maybe we want to add something in the background. So that's really where we need to think, is this the way we want it, or do we need to invert the alpha? But we can probably work with this for starters. So let's see what next. We need to load the entire image sequence into now. So here's an interesting one. We have a selection mask in the same file as the colors, and with the animation we could go and load the selection if we have it as a separate file, such as the AVI. So we would need to think about how can we get this image sequence into an animation that we save back as a DWA or as an AVI, and really we want to focus on just the alpha channel. But we really don't necessarily have to do that if there's another way to composite it, and there is. So let me show you this. I'm going to, first of all, Control D to clear the alpha. I'm going to load the animation sequence. So load sequence from the animation menu, and perhaps I don't need the whole sequence initially. Let's do a test Let's go to where this is actually located under my daily dose 9, and where is it? One of those here, compositing, right? And here's the folder. So the first PNG is this one here. Let's grab the first dozen or so and load that selection. All right, so here's the animation that we have created, and there's a lot we will be doing with this, but right now what we loaded is an image sequence, and this loading did not load the alpha with it. Right, so this only loads the RGB values. The alpha channel is not coming along with it. If we go to the selection and show the alpha, yep, it's the whole thing is selected, but no mask is there. But what we could do, because it's an image sequence, we can actually composite that against another animation, and that's ultimately what we want to do. So here's what we'll do. We'll load the other animation. The other animation is going to be something that I did in another tutorial long ago. So I'm going to actually load that other animation, load the image sequence, load an AVI. I think I have it in AVI, and it's going to be probably under the days of 8.2 when we had some sort of a meteor impact. Was it there? No, it wasn't Hello World. And you know, I have to go look for that quick because I don't remember exactly in which folder I had it. Be right back. Ah, there it is, found it. Yep, it's under my daily dose meteor crash. So at this point, I think I want to use one of these animations. There's the glowing meteor. There's the assault on Earth. That was kind of the final with the meteors on it. Let me see if I have something with just the Earth. No, I don't. This one's showing AVI files, because that's what I'm trying to load. Okay, well, I may have an image sequence or some other formats, maybe MPEG. I'll just use, you know what, let me use this and see if we can work from that. We'll take the entire sequence here. It's not too long, 500 frames. Actually, maybe we'll take less of that. You know, let's make it 10 seconds, so the first 300 frames. So it doesn't matter if you have a few more. All right, so let's load 321 frames. Yeah, it's kind of a wide angle thing. We can use that though. We can definitely use work with that. So one thing I'll do is I'll save this quick animation, save, because we'll probably get back to that, and work with it and load it a few times as needed. So let's go find my, where is it, daily dose, come on, why does it not let me go back? Okay, let's just go to the D drive, and D drive, daily dose on 9, compositing there. Alright, so here's my quick animation that I'm going to be working with. This one's being saved in DWA. It's a relatively quick save. It's a quick memory dump, but it doesn't compress it, doesn't make it a small file. Sometimes compressing takes a lot of time depending on the compression algorithm. Sometimes though it could be a fast compress compared to the time it takes to actually save the large file. Luckily here I have kind of a fast hard drive too. Not as fast as could be, but it's not a showstopper. Let's put it this way. All right, so let's work back now with the animation. So we have this animation here, and we want to essentially have this this animation of this character that I showed earlier. I call it "This Girl Is Also on Fire" and she's falling. She'll be falling towards Earth here. And what we'll do is we can composite that in a couple of ways. One of them under the animation menu, actually not the animation menu, but the timeline directly here in the animation timeline context bar. What you can do is you can find compositing options here, filters to composite. Right, there's filters to combine with the with what's in the background, and that would work too possibly. Right, if we have a moving sequence of the alpha channel, but we don't. We have the alpha channel in each frame directly, not as a separate AVI yet. So that's a separate exercise, how to extract that. But right now here, what I'll focus on is compositing with swap or composite with a sequence. That's the one. We have an image sequence. Could be Targa, BMP, JPEG, or PNG. And there is an alpha mode, so alpha composition. That's the one we'll be looking for. So let's go select the sequence. And that brings us to that folder and select the first one. We don't need to select multiple files here. We'll just take the first one. And it will find the sequence numbering, the numbering sequence, and just grab that. So now what we can do is have this character here somewhere in the middle. It's kind of difficult to see this preview because it's a small image in the first place. But she'll be essentially composited into somewhere on the image here. That's not working too well right now for me because I want to be able to say exactly where she's going to be. And since the images are not the same dimensions, that's not going to work right. So keep this one in mind if you do have an image in the background that is the same dimensions as the image sequence that you're now loading and compositing. This selection here that I tried, I don't think that worked, and the reason is because they're not the same dimensions. Right, so what else? Well, there is another technique, and that's to actually think outside of the box or outside of the layer and outside of the image buffer, and in this case think inside the brush, the custom animated brush. So what that means is that, well, this is after all a paint program, so how about if we load that image sequence directly into the brush? And then we can stamp it down, and we can actually freehand paint where she's going to fly around. So that's another level of liberty you have then at that point. There's some freedom of painting and dabbling around here. So what I'll do is I'll load, I'm going to look for the brush menu, and in the brush menu look for animated brush. Because under animated brush you can load a sequence just the same way. And when you load a sequence the same way here, let's say we want, oh, look at that, it has to be BMP or Targa. Not PNG. So we would need to first convert those to Targa or BMP. Alright, so in fact in Carrara we could probably render it out to Targa and save that step. Alright, so let's go take care of that, and then we'll come back. Now how we convert this PNG is going to be interesting because no, it's not just a 24-bit, it's a 32-bit PNG, and we want to keep it as we convert it to Targa. We want to make sure it stays in that. So there are different tools that will do that. You just want to make sure that yours does not drop the alpha channel. Of course, it's not the end of the world in this case because we could still probably key to the black background. But let me show you here the application I'm going to use, the QuickTime Player. Now that's $29 to bring it up to Pro, and so when you go to the Pro level with QuickTime Player, you actually have the ability to convert videos also and image sequences. So what I'll do is I'll say, let's create a new, let's close this, we don't need the ads. Let's go and load a sequence, right? Ouvrir une séquence d'images. I'm running the French version here, so let's go and load an image sequence. And in this case, it's still on my D drive under the daily dose, and it's under the 9 folder, and it's under, let's see what else. The interface could be improved there a little bit. Compositing, there it is. All right, so under compositing, now it sees a whole bunch of files, right? And I don't know if I'm supposed to select them all. Nope, just select the first one, I would think. And it knows it's a sequence. And let's see if we can load that. And let's say we want to play this at 30 frames a second. 30 images per seconde. Let's see what happens here. Did I cancel or did I open? I so don't like it if it's not telling me what's going on. Okay, there it is. It loaded it. Took a little while and no feedback, but now we have it. And so the question is, can we save this back now? It displays stress nicely. Can we save this back now as a Targa? And I believe we can. So let's go to Control E for export, or we can do that here, exporter, Control E. And what we'll do is we'll say that we still want it as a TGA, as an image sequence. So exporter, export format, you want to make sure that you keep it as an image sequence, right? Séquence vers suite d'images. If you wanted that to convert to a movie file, you could certainly do so, and there are some options, some codecs or compressors that will keep the alpha there too, in 32-bit mode. So, but what I'll do is I'll set the channel, the format to go to Targa and TGA. Right, it could be BMP also, and I believe it will keep the alpha channel there, but I'm not sure that I have time to test that theory, so let's just keep it TGA, and images per second, keep it the way it is, or just force it to 30, because we know that's what we have and want. And do we need a space in front of the numbers? No, let's just keep them the way they are. And then other options. So do we need this to be converted to any depth? No, we need it in million colors plus. That's what Apple uses in QuickTime to indicate that it's more than millions of colors. It's millions of colors plus something, and that something, of course, is the alpha channel. So let's do that and save that and do so. I think we can go just already straight to save that. And so now I'm converting these images from PNG to Targa. And so we'll have a whole bunch of new images here. I hope I'm saving them in the right folder. It's probably going to be, yep, all the way at the bottom here. There are my Targa files. Now, the thumbnails are not going to show what they contain because Windows doesn't know what a TGA file is anymore. And we can open that and see that the character is there. We can go and see if the image information is showing us 32-bit. Yep, there it is. So perfect. We did a nice conversion to to Targa, keeping the alpha channel there too. So that's done. We don't need the QuickTime converter anymore. Let's go back to Dogwaffle, and then this time what we'll do is we'll do that on the Targa image sequence, right? So we'll load brush, animated brush, and load sequence. And in the load sequence, this time we'll say let's go with a Targa file. And are we in the right location? Let's select the folder. Hello. Oh, there it is. Sometimes you need to Alt Tab or something to switch to bring it to the foreground if for any reason it went to the background. Let's go to my computer, D drive, daily dose 9, compositing, and then there it is. Here's that folder. This falling girl is on fire, and so that's where we will find now our TGA files, right? These are the ones that we didn't have initially, but we converted from the PNG to TGA. And what we do here is we select the first image. You don't select a series of them. You select the first one, and we'll then go and grab the entire sequence. All right. So for each of those images that it finds, it's going to load them and add them to the custom brush that it's building up as it goes. And that custom brush is essentially the image sequence, right? But it's not just an image sequence. It's the image sequence that also uses the alpha channel. So it has the RGB values for each pixel, plus the alpha to indicate whether it's opaque or transparent. And we should see the opaque part on the body of the girl, and then we should see the transparent part on the outside, leaving that transparent, allowing us to nicely composite this animated brush over the background animation we already have loaded here. Now, so this one is 300 images. Will take a little while. We have the little status on every single image of that sequence. Sometimes you might say, well, it wouldn't be nice if we could just load one AVI file or one, DWA. Yes, but in this case we had an image sequence. That's the situation you'll see a lot when you render from 3D programs, is that it was rendered to an image sequence for a variety of reasons. And one of them is that, well, with PNG format, for instance, we were able to keep that alpha channel information. But another reason for it quite often is that if you render something to an AVI, if something goes wrong during that rendering, let's say it's a 10-hour long rendering and 8 hours into it suddenly you run out of memory, or there's a power outage, whatever it is, it crashes, and boom, you lost the animation because it didn't save it in a format that is finished. And there may be some problems with that AVI file. Even though it rendered 8 hours out of 10 already, it may not be able to let you play that. So recovering a damaged AVI file or a damaged MP4 or QuickTime is not always trivial. Whereas if you have an image sequence, a file sequence, Well, the last one that was rendered is probably good, maybe not, so you toss it. But everything before that is its own file, and it was saved during the rendering. So that's why quite often professionals will like to use individual images. And there's other reasons too, because you can find image formats that contain more than 8 bits per channel. They're 16-bit deep or something like that. All right, so but anyway, we have the image sequence loaded as a brush. Let's go to the brush menu and store that so we don't lose it if we accidentally load another brush. Yep, and there she is. You can see the plaid pattern for the transparency, and the opaque is on the inside. Now let's do a couple of tests with that. I'm going to switch to the swap buffer, and I'm going to show the preview, PRV, so I can see the preview of the brush and I can start painting. Now it's actually semi-transparent here, so I need to make sure the brush is fully opaque as she's being applied. There it is. So let's go do a quick erase and render that. You can do individual steps here. Now if you want to see if it's really animating, one thing you can do is reduce the step distance here to very small, maybe 1 or 2 pixels, and then that way as you're moving you are able to see that there's a movement. If you click with the right button to paint, it will erase. If you use the left button, it will draw. Now it may be difficult, if depending on how big this character is, to see what's going on here, but you can tell it's moving. And so what we'll do is we'll say, well, maybe we need to make it a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger as we render that, as we paint it over the animation in the background. Remember how to do that with the Alt key. You paint with the Alt key down. It's not going to only animate the character in the brush, it's also going to animate the background. And so you're going to have one frame of the brush stamp onto the background and then keep going across the entire image sequence. That's not what I'm going to do in this case though, because I want to kind of do a little bit of a preview of where she's going to go fly through and how she's going to disappear and get smaller and smaller as she falls to earth. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's switch back over here under the main buffer. So I don't want to paint her like this on it. And I'm not going to use the Alt key, because if I did, it would basically damage my video and it would have to load it back, which is one reason why I did save it, because I know that happens a lot. So let's go and do the following instead. Since this is in my brush, this animated character is in my brush, one thing I can do is render it across the background through the brush keyframer. Right here from the animation menu. So the brush keyframer is going to be where the brush and the image sequence come together. It's not keeping the same aspect ratio, and since this one's fairly wide, I may want to adjust the window of the brush keyframer. But you can see now that that character is right here, and perhaps I want her initially somewhere in this area, drifting to the left. And remember, she actually does turn around and look at us, right? And then she comes back. Oh, and she's upside down. How did that happen? Somehow maybe in the conversion. She's supposed to be falling down to earth, not looking up at the skies. I know it's meteor showers, Perseids coming, but maybe we need to flip her upside down. So that may have happened during the conversion. And what we'll do is we'll simply go to the brush menu and flip it vertically. There's a shortcut for that. And once that's done, we can go and store that brush. So we'll go and say store and manage it. So now we have another copy of it. Yep, that's more like it. If we do a side by side, we can probably see, yep, this one was definitely upside down. Okay, so let's go back to the animation. This one we don't need anymore. We have now a stored copy here. This is the one we do want to work with. And as we grab it, we want to make sure we make this our current brush. And so we can get the brush right here. And now she is in there. So when you click Get Brush, that will refresh what brush is currently in use here. And so now, as we fly through that, as we scrub through the animation, one thing you'll notice is that yes, she is indeed animated, right? And she's bombarded by a lot of different meteors that are in that background animation. But one thing we'll do is see right here, for instance, her leg is indeed rendered in front of the meteor. She is always in front because that's the current brush, and we can move her around. So what we'll do now here is we'll have her, perhaps we'll have her come in from the top, right? And so we'll do that from the beginning. From the beginning, she'll be coming in like so. And perhaps even a little bit bigger. You can change the scale to make her come a little bit bigger, like so. All right, so keyframe that. One keyframe here. And that's something you can do with a shortcut. I think there's K for keyframe, or enter, hit the enter key. Because you may have a lot of keyframes, you said. So here, the first one, we'll do a couple, maybe 30 or 40 frames. Move her a little bit to the left and make her a little bit smaller so she's not flying too fast quite yet. And keyframe that, or hit enter. So now we have another keyframe. You see the little red tick mark here. And now we go, and we see the dashed lines here that show the animation. Now we'll go to a little bit back and even smaller. Not a whole bunch, just a little bit. Right? We could even rotate her too. If the angle wasn't perfect, we could change the angle a little bit here. Right? In fact, you know what? In space there is no up and down, so let's do that. Something like this. Let's keyframe that. So we now have another keyframe. And so here, well, we know that she's looking at us and she's waving. It's like we're parachuting with her, right? So let's go and do a little bit more. Let's say we're coming closer again, right? And we're rotating her back so that we can see both hands. And that's a Kodak moment right there. So I must have broken so many laws here today. So let's go and keyframe that one as well. And then we have one more. And now she's turning her attention back to the incoming doom, because she's about to disappear here. So I'm going to go keyframe that. And now she is zooming onto the Earth. So for this, it's going to be, we want to make sure she's going to the very end here, like so. Okay, but she is kind of disappearing into the ocean, and so she's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and she's going to go like so. Okay, and perhaps we can still make her spin a little bit more. Okay, keyframe that last one, and now we have the entire animation sequence. Now we can do this in a linear mode, so it's straight lines. That might look okay, but sometimes it's a little bit iffy. Sometimes it's a little bit jumpy. It makes sudden changes. If you're in a very rough environment with the medium, maybe the wind blowing suddenly in a different direction, yeah, that's okay. But it might be easier to not have, well, actually this looks very good. This looks very rocking, you know. So let's keep it in a linear and go render. You could also do some motion blur. Oh, there it is. There's so it can do multiple renderings. If things move fast, you can have them kind of motion blurred. There's other stuff we can do later though. So let's just keep it as that and render. So what we're doing now is we're rendering that animated brush, the sequence that was rendered in Carrara with alpha. We're rendering that frame for frame along a path with changing size and angles, and we could even have changed the opacity. We render that against the animation sequence that's in the background. You notice it stopped animating. At some point it will not animate, it will not update, because essentially it's doing the rendering so quickly it takes all the resources to do that, and it doesn't want to bother. That may be different on your Windows system. In my case here, it just stops updating until it's done. And I'm done, and I could actually have another one of her fly next to her, do a tandem, have two flying parachutists going down there. But let's go and disable the preview. Let's close this brush. I might not want to delete yet. I might still need it. Let's make sure we clear the alpha channel if we had one here, and we see what animation we now have created. And yeah, she is on fire. So now we need to do a little bit of glow on that. So that's something we could have done before, actually. Before we render her, we could have increased the contrast on that character. And there is one glitchy here. I don't know which one it is. There's one little, seems like I saw one little glitch, but that's okay. There is, let me go and get rid of the custom brush. I'm going to simply select dot for resetting the brush, so I'm not currently using the custom brush. And one thing I'm going to do now is work a little bit on this animation to add just some final renders let's say I want to add some in the timeline, some glow, maybe do some adjustment on the values, and increase. Oh, we could perhaps first do the color adjustment. So color add or color adjustment, right? So that could be useful to give it a little bit more of a tint of some sort, and perhaps add some color. You could, for instance, increase the amount of red. That's not going to be just on her though, that's going to be on the entire scene. So again, that's one reason why we might actually have done better if we did that color adjustment on the custom animator brush, which we can, by the way. You can grab the custom brush, and once that custom brush is selected, you can go to the brush menu, animator brush, and go to the timeline there. There's a custom brush timeline. Where did I leave it? Oh, there it is, silly me. Custom animator brush timeline. So with that, you can actually also go and do some improvements on the flying character there without affecting the background. This is working just on that. So let's say you could do color add or adjustment. You could do, say, more red. So you see how the red is now more intense. You could, of course, actually add some green as well, and render that. And so applying that filter now across the entire image sequence that's in my brush. And so that way you get a more intense appearance for the character, more saturation or more color, all sorts of filters here that you can apply across that animation. And you want to keep that, so you keep the render. And I may have actually saved, oh, there it is. Keep the render. So now I have it brighter. Now maybe I want to add some other adjustments. Value adjust, I could make it even brighter. Contrast adjustment, gamma, all sorts of ways to make it even more intense, or even change the hue. You could make some changes on the color so she doesn't burn in red, but she burns in blue or yellow. Tons of other ways to improve that, to change that. And it's really great because you don't have to go back to your original 3D render to re-render that. Remember how long that took to render, right? I mean, this was something that probably took about use destination as brush. So this is something that may have taken really a long time to render, and you don't necessarily have the time to re-render it at a different color. All right, so let's see, what do we have here? We want to render that as is, going back to that timeline. Let's just do this last one here and see our final render. Well, this is never final, you know. You always want to add something else to it. You might want to add a little bit of glow. You may want to add some motion blur to make it look like Mystic Vision, to make it look like it's flying up in the air, or the wind, there's a wind trail, or let's see, where is it here? On the blur, Mystic Vision. So you can put some brights on there, although it's also going to do that on the globe behind it. Still an interesting effect though. And so all sorts of different tools you can apply here, applying the filters over this animation. And there she is, and there she goes. All right, so thanks for watching. Hopefully that will give you some ideas of stuff you can do, definitely beyond digital painting here with this feature, because this is where you start seeing you know, animation recomposited and going beyond digital painting. All right, thanks for watching.